Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. In this video I'm going to be talking about quite a few things that I read this week, but I am going to preface this by saying that this week was a very strange week in my life, more so than any other week. I did spend a lot of time in and out of the hospital because one of my family members, a very close member of my family, went through a medical emergency and had to have emergency surgery on Monday afternoon. So I actually was not at work full time during the week. I was in and out of work, I was in and out of the hospital. It's been a week, and to that end there is a higher ratio of audiobooks this week because I spent a lot of time just needing to process things, and I was doing a lot of diamond painting and therefore listening to audio because I couldn't sit still. So this is my reading week from the 11th until the 17th of March. I read or reread 11 things and DNF'd 2, and we're going to talk about them. So I'm just going to talk about very briefly the DNFs that I had. I started and DNF'd One Pucked Up Pack by Sarah Blue. This is an Omegaverse Why Choose Hockey romance. May and Izzy had told me about this one and I was trying to give it a really red hot go, but honestly I got 50% of the way in, and part of the conflict of this is that the heroine is the Omega and she meets these 3 hockey players who all play on the same college hockey team, but they're about to be drafted and more than likely they're all going to go their separate ways. So they meet over the break, and the whole, I think, conflict of the book is the fact that they're going to be separated. Well, by the 40% or whatever mark, they still hadn't been separated, and therefore I was just not interested in continuing. So unfortunately that was a miss for me. The other miss was Cold Temptation by Laura Marquez Diamond, which is another hockey romance. This is a contemporary hockey romance between a veteran goalie who has been traded to a new team, and when he gets there he finds that a woman that he had a one-night stand with, who also happens to be a sports psychologist, is currently working for the team. I didn't get very far into this one. I just was not feeling it at all and just put it down. It didn't capture my attention in any way, so that's why I didn't continue. My audiobooks were all rereads, so I had listened to One Fell Sweep by Ilona Andrews, which was the 3rd book in Innkeeper Chronicles series, which we have a live show for that next weekend. And I read it, and then I was still doing my diamond painting, so I thought, what the heck, I'm going to go back, I'm going to listen to Clean Sweep and Sweep in Peace and then One Fell Sweep. And I'm so glad that I did that, and I re-listened to all 3 of them again this week while diamond painting and trying to not think about person in hospital. And I'm glad that I did it because, as I sent a message to the rest of the group that's reading the books with me, there was something in book 1 that I didn't pick up on any other time, and like this is the 3rd or 4th time that I've reread this book. I didn't pick up on it because it relates to book 2, and because I had never read them in such close succession and I hadn't gone back and read the first book after reading the second book, I never picked it up. And I picked it up this time and my mind is blown, and Ilona Andrews are playing the long game with this series, so I'm very excited to see what happens. Without fail, someone always calls me in the middle of filming. Anyway, moving on. So I reread all of the Innkeeper Chronicles books up to book 3 on audio. I also reread Moonstruck by Onley James on audio, and I have like 10 minutes left of Learn My Lesson by Katie Roberts. So all of these are books that I've read many times, so I'm not going to go into any detail about them, but just know there is something in Clean Sweep that pertains to book 2, and I'm so annoyed that I never picked up on it before now. In terms of new reads to me, I read Breaking the Cycle by Megan Lowe. This is an Australian contemporary kind of insta-love romance between a member of a racing team and a waitress slash uni student. So Reed Ryan and his family have terrible luck with their relationships, but they are all part of the Ryan racing team. So they race motorbikes, they do motocross, and something else. All different types. And there's a whole stack of brothers in the family and they all do different things. One night Reed ends up meeting Bria, who is, she's not a waitress. She works in the supermarket. And she comes in after work to his family's diner to get some dinner before she goes home. And while she's there, she meets Reed, she meets his nephew, who is super cute, and also is witness to a rival racing club coming to pick a fight with the Ryan brothers. This is Reed and Bria's story. They basically have this instant attraction to one another. Reed is just enamored with her from the word go, and it's kind of this whirlwind romance, and she gets sort of swept up into the racing family's lifestyle. And yeah, like it was a very fast, quick and easy read. It was very Australian just in terms of colloquialisms and the language used, which is always really nice for me to read every now and then because that's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with. And if you don't mind some insta-love, it's not too bad. I will say that this one does have a lot of talk about having kids, about a pregnancy, and there's just a couple of references that made me go, really? So, and these are not the normal references that make me knock off stars. It was just something that I didn't even know was going to be something that made me stop and go, hang on a second, why is this reference in here? So there is a reference to The Sound of Music that didn't quite sit right with me, so I'm just gonna flag that one. And yeah, like, it was fine, but not top of my reading list this week. Then I decided to try my hand at reading some different hockey romances just because I've been in that mood. So I read Grinder by Samantha. This is book 1 in the Seattle Sharks series, and this is about Gage, who is the best grinder for the Seattle Sharks, but he's also a single dad raising his 3-year-old daughter, who is just adorable. I'm having good luck with kids in books at the moment. It's making my heart happy. And because he is so busy with the team and with traveling, he has hired his childhood best friend Bailey to also be their nanny, so that someone is always with his daughter. And Bailey loves the daughter and they all get along really well until Gage and Bailey realize that maybe they might need to give in to their attraction to one another. So it is a friends to lovers nanny romance, and it was really good fun. Then I read A Lie for a Lie by Helena, which is book 1 in the All In series. I think this has links to the Pucked series, but I haven't read all of that. But this one was already on my Kindle, so I decided to pick it up. This is about Lainey and Rook, who have this summer fling in Alaska. Rook, he normally goes away with his brother and they have this sort of summer fishing trip, but his brother can't attend this year, and Lainey is studying marine biology of some kind. I've forgotten the specifics, but she's there to study whales and dolphins. And it's her first big trip on her own, and she and Rook end up having a meet cute on the plane where she quite literally falls in his lap, and they end up having this romance across the summer, and then suddenly they both have to go their separate ways. And when they leave, they both leave with a secret that they haven't shared, and in one case that they didn't know. Rook had implied that he was an alpaca farmer, because that's what his family had when he was growing up, and didn't reveal that he was an NHL player. And when they reconnect later on, Lainey has her own secret, and the two have to sort of meet in the middle. Now, this is an accidental pregnancy / kind of secret baby story, but it didn't annoy me like most of them do, because I figured out what was going to happen pretty quickly into the story, and so I mentally prepared myself for it. And it was actually very, very sweet how Rook, once he found out what had happened and the fact that he had a son, how he just wanted to absolutely be involved in whatever way Lainey would have him be involved. And just watching him grow as a character was very sweet. And also watching Lainey, who had been very sheltered and her parents had trouble sort of letting her be her own person, how she's come into her own and how she's had to learn how to be independent and how to be a mother and how to basically defend what's hers. So I quite liked that dynamic. Continuing my hockey romance reads, I read Boyfriend Bargain by Madden-Mills, which is Hawthorne University book 1. And this one is a fake dating story. So you have the heroine, Sugar Ryan, and I know people are called Sugar. Did that throw me out of the story every time I read it? A little bit, yes. Anyway, she is in college and she is trying to get into sort of like an Ivy League school because she's studying to be a lawyer, but she doesn't have the funds to do it or sort of the background pedigree, and so she's finding it hard. And so her grand plan is to propose to the hottest college hockey player at Hawthorne University, that they fake date and that he be her fake date to an event where she could be sort of shortlisted for a scholarship to the college. He's all for it and has some conditions of his own, but they quickly begin to develop real feelings for one another. Now, this is really complicated by the fact that Zach, the hero, is suffering from guilt, trauma, severe anxiety, and this is due to the fact that his high school girlfriend died and he carries a lot of guilt and residual trauma from that event. It's complicated even further because Sugar resembles physically his dead girlfriend, and he recognizes that they're completely different people with different personalities, but initially he's struck by the fact that they look very similar. And a lot of people around Zach who know what happened also pick up on the resemblance and find it very strange. I did like the exploration of the fact that Zach is sort of the top NHL draft pick, but he's suffering from anxiety. He's seeing a sports psychologist, but his anxiety does have the potential to cripple his career before it even begins. And there is discussion around that. So there was a lot going on in this book and I did enjoy it. And there is a second book out which follows, I think, Zach's best friend and roommate, which I'm intrigued to pick up at some point. I also listened to Chick Magnet by Emma Barry. So this is a contemporary romance The audio narrators for this are CJ Bloom and Aaron Shedlock. Again, this was something that I was listening to while I was diamond painting. This is about Nick Jones, who is sort of a social media influencer because she has been raising chickens, and during the pandemic and the lockdowns, she was creating content and vlogging about raising chickens, and so she's known as Chick Nick. But she had a very, very public online breakup with her gaslighting asshole ex. We don't like him, not even a little bit. And so she packed everything up, she packed up her chickens, and she's moved to the small town where her grandmother grew up. And there she meets local vet Will, who knows who she is not very impressed by this social media personality. He's concerned sometimes by the content that she shares and the fact that people have taken up raising chickens without really investigating and knowing anything just because they've seen her do it because she's a social media person. The two have to sort of overcome his prejudice towards that, while he is also dealing with his own sort of hangover from the pandemic in the fact that his veterinary practice is going under. He is basically almost bankrupt, and that puts a lot of pressure on him because he feels like he's failed. His relationship with his family is complicated, and all the pressure gets to him, and he lashes out in various ways because he's not sure how to cope. This one does deal a lot with depression, anxiety. There's mentions of therapy or going to therapy on page, which is always important, and was just a really great read and a really great audiobook as well. The narrators did a fantastic job. And the last book that I read this week was Lethal in Love by Michelle Summers. This is an Australian romantic suspense book set in Melbourne between a detective called Jada, who is investigating the return of a serial killer called the Night Terror, who terrorized Melbourne 25 years earlier and suddenly has reappeared. However, she is beginning to suspect that it is not the original serial killer but a copycat, and that has implications for her investigation. When someone very, very close to her is killed by the serial killer, she is taken off the case and she is forced to work with Seth, who is an investigative journalist who is after a story, and the two begin to unpack what has gone on. This one had lots of twists and turns, lots of great dialogue and banter. I did find that it was probably a little bit long just in terms of pacing and things that happened in the story. The other thing that I want to throw out here, just because it didn't quite sit right with me, is that the original serial killer, who we find out about midway through the book and is not the person responsible for everything else that's going on, so I'm not going to consider this a spoiler, is revealed to be a trans man. I wasn't quite sure how to feel about it because I don't think that was a decision that was made to demonize trans people. It was purely a reveal of why this person didn't seem to have a history prior to a certain point. But I am also very aware that quite often we get trans and queer people demonized for who they are, and I don't think that's what was done here, but I just want to mention it because I know that can be triggering for people. Otherwise, it was a pretty riveting read. In the comments, I would love to know what you have been reading recently, or if you have read any of these books and you have thoughts on them, feel free to share them down below. Otherwise, feel free to share a chicken emoji if you want to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.